Hello, greetings to everyone. We are live with Father Murr on August 21st, 2024. Father Murr, you're in southern Spain, and I think you just received a guest in your house.
I did. The famous Andy. I can't pronounce his last name. What is? I should be ashamed of myself.
Mosiak.
That's why I can't pronounce it. That's it. A great guy, and he came over to Robert. He came over. Wait till you see the chapel. Wait till you see the chapel. He
Oh,
brought he brought the crucifix and the candles and everything from the United States. God bless him.
so
A
you're
work of
becoming
mercy.
a destination for pilgrims.
Well, I'm giving retreats. I'm going to tell you something before we get started. The number of canceled priests, canceled seminarians, priests and seminarians and laymen looking for a bishop, looking for a place to be as priests. It's amazing. It's amazing. These times are really crazy. Are really crazy, and
Well,
their only sin. The only sin that these people have committed is being Catholic.
yeah, so I think that's our theme. We're in a crazy time. It's sort of like the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. We've had a certain decline and fall of the so-called Pax Americana. We've got war in the Middle East, war between Russia. Russia's now being invaded on land. That happened in World War II. So these people have nukes, and the World Economic System is prophesying to us we're going to have a great reset. They've already told us that they will do that. Everything will change. In the midst of this, the Roman Catholic Church, which in a way inherited the Roman Empire, as it kind of left its role as a kind of maker of roads and maker of aqueducts and keepers of the law. The church had the 1,000 years of Christendom and then another 500 years of the early modern and modern period. But now we're reaching a kind of postmodern period and a post-Christian period. And we are right there in 2024 as the church, fraying around the edges, has little sanctuaries like your place, and maybe even places like this little podcast.
Well, I think you're right, and I think it's the people are talking about the underground church. We're not underground, not at all, and we're not traditionalists. We're not this. We're not that. We're Catholics.
Beautiful.
Simply that. And I think if I may just put a modifier to that, educated Catholics. Hopefully, we
Mm.
know where we stand, and we know what ground is ours to stand on.
Well,
That's
I
it.
really appreciate you because you actually we repeat this again and again, but you knew very well Cardinal Gagnon. You met and had lunch with Cardinal Benelli, who had possibly was a candidate to be elected Pope in 1978. You knew Mother Pasqualina, who was at the right hand of Pius XII. You've lived in Rome, and then you've also lived in Mexico. You've seen the Mexican Church. You've lived in New York. You've watched all of this in your life. So
Lived in
you're
Salzburg. Lived in Salzburg for 2 years, which was beautiful. Living in Salzburg was like going back in time. It was fantastic. Those
hmm,
2 years were great. And 10 or 11 years in New York. Yeah, it's been a full life and a life all over the place. I had like you, Robert, we have a different sense of the church because we've seen the church in all of these different places and at different times. And
yeah.
we know what the real faith is. We see how it's being expressed and how in some cases lamentably being lost. But also we see how it's gaining ground in other places. I mean, so it's not all black, not all white.
Absolutely. I was just saying earlier, it does seem that there are two aspects. And as I think about that question of the Roman Empire and the church sort of taking on the mantle in the 300s, the bishop taking the role as the governor of the province, the Americans, we say that the role of the church leader, whether it's the Pope, whether it's a bishop, or whether it's a parish priest, is to be a curator or savior or pastor of souls. And in that process, to allow people to find meaning in their lives, to introduce them to the system of sacraments, which incorporates them into the church and into Christ himself. But there is also another factor in this world, which is that bishops have to be administrators. They've sometimes got a parish school, they've got a hospital, they've got a convent, they've got other properties. They're going to have a lawyer at their side. They deal with a government that will either impose or reduce their taxes. If they're under a communist regime, they're under oppression. If they're opposed, if they're under these new woke regimes, there's other types of pressures. So I
Mhm.
think we should all be aware that from the bottom to the top, the church is not of the world, but it is in the world. And on each of these levels, we have to support as we would support also the fathers of families or the structures of families, support the parish priests, realize what tasks they face, support the bishops, realize it's an enormous task. And then the Vatican too, I think you could assess this yourself, does come under the crossfire of pressures from governments around the world and movements and leaders around the world who want the church to play a role in some type of long range plan that they have.
Yeah, that would be fine, Robert, because the church has done that for 2,000 years. They've tried to go along to get along, always trying to accommodate their own situation to whoever was reigning as emperor or king or president, what have you. You have to get along with people. I understand that, but you're not supposed to lose the product along the way. And I think somewhere along the way in these modern times, we have lost what we're about. It's fine. We get along with this government, that government. The United States, since Ronald Reagan, I don't know how Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II managed this, but they got diplomatic relations between the Vatican and the United States. With all of the Freemason hatred there was of the Vatican at the turn of the century, the beginning of the last, and they just did because they were great men, and they accomplished that. And this is very important diplomatically, to have diplomatic relations. I told you, I gave you the story, the Syrian that I wrote.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's typical. I mean, here you've got this situation where they're going to desecrate the bodies of all of the servicemen killed in that raid in Tehran on the embassy, and
Back in 1979, 1980.
in 79, and the Pope gets on the phone with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter gets on the phone with the Pope asking for his help. Well, they sent over Monsignor Capucci, Archbishop Capucci, who was persona non grata. Believe me, persona non grata by the Vatican and by everyone except Syria and the Palestinians. They loved him. Right? Used to kill me. We would get letters and postcards and everything else from Christmas wishes and everything else from Syria and from Lebanon, from Saudi Arabia and everything with Archbishop Capucci's image on the stamp. He was the stamp. So I mean, they used him. I mean, what I'm trying to say with a longhand here, is that there are situations where governments depend on the church also for help, and the church on governments for help. So you have to be diplomatic at times. I understand that, but you can't be diplomatic. This is a tricky thing. You cannot be diplomatic to the point of almost denying the faith to get along. And that's a problem. That's a problem. Always been a problem.
Well, you are now in southern Spain, and you have a guest there, and you're joining our podcast. And we have a little video to play because we're coming to visit you at the end of October for a whole week.
Oh, that's going to be grand. That's going to be grand.
And
Robert, we just got the kitchen done yesterday to receive you. So now you've got a kitchen. Isn't that great?
So no more cooking over the open fire.
No, the farmhouse actually has a kitchen, so you'll be happy.
So, and we have a producer of this program who's joining our team, Father. It's Matt Gaspers.
Oh, listen, I just saw Matt briefly before we went on air. If Matt is watching, congratulations. I like that, Robert. I think that's a great addition. I really do, and he's a good man.
So We're coming to the end of the summer and we're gathering our forces. But let's take a look at the video because if anyone would like to come, there's still time to join us for the end of October. There's a few places left.
Come with us on a unique pilgrimage and retreat to renew your spirit. Experience the beauty and richness of southern Spain. Our retreat master, Father Charles T. Murr, a renowned Catholic priest, best-selling author, philosopher, theologian, trained psychologist, and pastor of souls. Father Murr will guide us through 3 mornings of spiritual reflections at a convent located in the historic heart of Carmona, Spain, promising a transformative journey. Experience an intimate evening with Father Murr at his home. Wine, dinner, music, and conversation, a highlight of this unique experience. Explore picturesque towns in Andalusia, each with its own history and charm. From the ancient streets of Carmona to the majestic beauty of Cordoba, the breathtaking views of Ronda, the remarkable village of Centenil, and the historic wonders of Seville. Our pilgrimage will be filled with awe-inspiring moments. Join us on this profound spiritual journey and rediscover the joy of faith, fellowship, and renewal. Book your place now and embark on a pilgrimage and retreat unlike any other.
All right, there we have the sunset over Spain.
I'm ready to sign up. Where do I sign?
Okay. Well, anyone that wants to, just contact us. We'll help you through and book tickets and everything.
Great.
There was a carriage there. I was sitting on that carriage, and Andy was there in a hat. Andy Mosiak.
That's Andy, who's now here
Yeah.
in a hat also.
Yeah. So this
He
gives
did me the great favor. We had someone donated the crucifix, brass or bronze crucifix and candle holders for the altar, and Andy brought them over, all 45 pounds of them, and carrying luggage. God love him. That's
well,
a
God,
spiritual work of mercy, if nothing else.
now, Father, don't you remember I brought you something as well?
Yes. What did you bring?
I
Oh my
brought
God.
the chandelier. There's some
You
type
brought
of
you brought the sanctuary lamp. That's right. That's right.
yeah.
That's right. I'm going to send Matt a photograph of the chapel with your sanctuary lamp and Andy's everything else all together. It's beautiful. It's very beautiful.
So the church is literally being built up and renewed there by you in southern Spain, and people are coming to visit you.
We've had a lot of very good priests. I wish people would know this, and I want them to know it. That's why I'm saying it. Very, very good priests and young priests and seminarians who have come here because they can't speak out loud in their seminaries. They can't speak out loud in their parishes. Even 2 bishops, Robert,
Wow.
who feel the same way. Right. So it's good. It's good, and I like the center here. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful place, and it affords time and situation for all of us to sit down and talk and to understand what's happening. These are difficult times for lay people, but it's also very difficult for the clergy. Believe me, it's very difficult for the clergy.
Yeah.
For good
And
priests. Anyway,
and-
we're becoming a center, and I like that. I like that very much. I'm very happy with that.
all right. And I thought we would start with some latest news items, and then we would go on to the case of Archbishop Viganò, because just last night he released another long interview with a very talented, capable Italian woman journalist who's covered the Vatican for 30 years. It's Franca John Soldati. She works for Il Messaggero. It appears to me that she sent questions to him by email. I don't think from reading this interview that she actually went to meet with him. But 2 things came up in that interview. One, that he didn't want to end up like 2 men who passed away. When he said that, I thought, it's suggesting that he feels he could be in danger. So he gives that impression when she asks him, "Where are you? Where do you live?" And he doesn't answer. So I thought we'd look at that passage in his thing, and then the other thing in that he actually speaks of the cases of Pietro Sambi, who was the nuncio in the United States that he succeeded in 2011. And I knew Pietro Sambi and appreciated him very much. Personally, I felt he was papabile. I thought if he entered into a conclave in Rome in the next few years after 2009 or 10 or 11, that they might select him. He had been in Israel for 5 years as the Vatican nuncio. Then he'd been in the United States, where we became friends. And then he was going back to Rome to have a high position in the Roman Curia. And he had a little operation in Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And his family said he'll be out, tomorrow morning. I think he stayed over one night. Some check in his heart or in his lungs, I think. And then he died. He died. And the man who worked in the embassy alongside, he's the man, Lanthium was a Monsignor who's now left all service. He was in the Vatican diplomatic service, and I caught up with him in France in around 2019, so 5 years ago. And he told me he was there serving under Sambi, and then he served under Viganò. Viganò replaced Sambi. That's when Viganò became the nuncio, 2011 to 2016. So right. Sambi dies in the summer of 2011, and because he died, the nunciature was open. In other words,
yes,
he was conveniently available to remove Viganò from the Vatican, if you follow my logic.
I do.
And his family he came from San Marino in Italy, and his family was completely shocked. And Lanthium told me that they never got a real explanation from the doctors of what the cause of death was. And then he said, I decided to quit the Vatican, and I'm shaking the dust off my shoes of this business, because it's true, isn't it, Father Murr? There can be some very perplexing and almost terrifying things that occur. I think you've seen them in your own life. Yes.
And I'm going to tell you something too. The idea of threats against one's life, those are real. Those are real. I had one, thank God, not two, but one, after I wrote the Murder in the 33rd Degree. I took it very seriously. And as a matter of fact, part of the reason that I'm on a farm in Spain is because of that. To be isolated from that, it kind of shook me a little bit. But yes, those things happen. And especially when you stand in the way of the powerful, you get in their way, and they see you like a gnat to be swatted and dismissed. That's it. So yeah, these are dangerous times and dangerous situations, because this is when you're talking about the Vatican and Vatican diplomacy and all, you're playing ball with the big boys. This is not a child's game, and there are a lot of odd things and strange things that happen. I told you when Archbishop, or when Cardinal, when the Pope John Paul I died, and I asked Cardinal Gagnon, did he think he was murdered? And Gagnon simply said, there are many ways of killing a man.
Yeah, that's what other authors have also said. They don't say that someone killed him, but they say they left him in a position of isolation and under pressure and tension to such a degree that whatever weaknesses were in him physically were overwhelmed by those pressures and tensions, and that killed him.
And you know yourself, Robert, that there are medications, poisons that can kill with a spray, and can't be detected afterwards. I mean, these things happen. We've seen some overt cases that right in airports, that we've had some people assassinated in such ways. So, but it's a lot of things.
We have so many things to discuss, but I want to talk about recent events. I was going to mention, there was no autopsy on John Paul I. was immediately
No,
decided. So we
that's
don't
right.
know if there was any substance in his body. But we also have a request from Dave Charette. Would you please comment on Cardinal Supich, Cardinal Archbishop of Chicago, his invocation at the DNC, that's the Democratic National Committee, that's the Democratic Party in the United States. They had a convention in Chicago where Supich is the Archbishop, and he gave an invocation for that Democratic convention. And any other thoughts you may have on the convention. Thank you very much. Father, what do you say?
Oh, you're going to throw the ball, you're following the ball into my court, is that it?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what I say. I thought the prayer that was given, I didn't even know how to react to it. It was I found it a nothing prayer. It could have been directed to Buddha. It could have been directed to Allah. It could anybody. It was just a general thing. No mention of Jesus Christ, though you're talking about one of his ministers who gave it. And you know what I found most disturbing, Robert? I might be wrong. Maybe there's parts that I'm not seeing, but I'm kind of following politics more this year probably than ever, because I think this is the last occasion that the United States has to remain the United States. I really believe that. I think it's right now. It's come to that. So I'm paying more attention to things. I haven't heard from that party who's having their convention in Chicago right now. And I might add in a parenthesis, reminiscent of another convention that I remember in 1968 in Chicago.
Yes, I remember.
With riots and everything else. Anyway.
The yippies.
Yeah. Well, they've had, and Jane Fonda, wasn't it? Yes, Miss Jane Fonda was there in all of her glory. I've never heard of anybody having no platform, no political platform. I've never heard of anyone running for office or any party proposing a candidate that didn't really have a platform except abortion. You can get a free abortion. What is this? Is that all? That's all that's what it's come down to?
Well,
and I found that prayer led by that person at that convention was so out of place because of that also, because of their platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's odd to know that our country has made that so central to our understanding of life and family and human freedom and the rights of people. The right to abort is something that from the very beginning of Christianity was always regarded as a abomination, as a shocking. There's no doubt that there would be difficult circumstances for women in this world, but to make it the very center of all the focus of a political party. Here's the speech that, or the text of Cardinal Supich's invocation. We praise you, O God of all creation, quicken in us a resolve to protect your handiwork. I guess meaning the creation. We always in the past spoke of human souls as the key thing. You are the source of every blessing that graces our lives and our nation, but we don't know who really he is referring to. We pray that you help us to truly understand and answer the sacred call of citizenship. We are a nation composed of every people and culture, united not by ties of blood, but by the profound aspirations of life, freedom, justice, and unbound hope. It's a very general and doesn't speak of the specific sacrifices we must make. There's nothing about Christianity in this or Christ or the cross. Yeah, here's Chesty Marine. Cardinal Supich did not mention our Lord Jesus Christ one time in his entire prayer. standing 78 feet from an abortion mill. Father Murr.
I think that last sentence says an awful lot. I don't know. I'm hearing so many people, Robert, and I think you would concur with this. They say they're Catholic, but I don't see much that they're doing that would show it. And this is an opportunity. If somebody wanted to have an opportunity to convert this wayward thinking, this would be golden. It was a golden opportunity. I don't see that it was taken advantage of to convert anybody, or to try to convert it, to try to enter right reason into politics. Just an invitation to right reason, to pray that people do the right thing, that they understand right from wrong. All of these concepts, moral concepts. There's nothing.
Well, yeah, what strikes me most of all is the complete absence of what we call the transcendent, the concept that there's something other than this very busy and very difficult life that we go day to day. But this is the Christian faith thinks is an eternal standard that is sort of like the North Star that we can always look to at every moment of our lives. And that Jesus would say, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul? We would say the soul was more important than billions and billions and billions of dollars. But today, everyone's thinking, let's make the money. Let's deal with things that are in this world. And there's no reality. There's no existence.
We are with that kind of thinking, we are in for one heck of a rude awakening, huh?
Yeah.
And I just see it coming. Unfortunately.
So I think without a reference to Christ, and without the reference to the sacrifice that we can make for others, it's a secular vision with rights for all, which somehow
except
for the
right for all,
for the unborn.
Yeah.
Well, for the last 2 minutes, I've been thinking I shouldn't say this, but my mother and father were young people, and my mother's parents were very concerned about her falling in love with my father and getting married when she was 19 years old. And then I was very shortly conceived. And my grandmother, out of a kind of realistic vision, was saying, are you sure that you know what you're doing? She said, I think you're throwing your life away. You're having a child and marrying when you're still 19. And my mother had me. In a different circumstance, she might not have. Like today.
With today's mentality.
Today's mentality. Therefore, I come to this question with a completely different attitude than many, many people, because I think, thank God, thank you, Mom, that she committed herself to her husband and to me, and chose me. I think of that every time I come to this question. So I'm not really objective I'm completely subjective. I think every woman who chooses a birth should be given tremendous support. And the society should support her and say, all human life has such deep worth. This is a great gift. And we throw it away. Is it that?
Robert, there's another part to that. Even those women, today's women who choose life, thank God, who choose life, are being told that they're being cheated for having done that. They're missing, like your grandmother was telling your mother, you're missing out on something. You're throwing your life away. Everything is negative, even for those who can have a child, where everything is perfect for them to have a child. Even then, And I was listening to Tucker Carlson, kind of one of my favorite people in the world. I hope to meet him one day. He had a man on, and I think his name was Dave Smith. I don't know who Dave Smith is. I should know. I suppose everybody else seems to know, but I don't know. But this Dave Smith was a very interesting fellow, and he brought up the point of the pill. He talked about the pill as what kind of a plot it was on the part of our government and on the part of the media and everything else. He said to where we get to a point that a pregnancy is being treated as a disease, as a disease. You're sick because you're going to have a child. We've really come a long way from the reality and beauty of life. Because the reality of life is harsh at times, sure it is, but it's also very, very beautiful. And we've forgotten the beauty. The beauty. It's a shame.
We've forgotten the beauty.
As you mentioned before, the transcendence also of life.
Absolutely. And so the greatest and most important things are being lost, and the dangerous and the selfish things are being praised. And our society, for this reason, is in great, great difficulty. Here's Bishop Strickland. We will never have peace until we return to God and respect life. Now, that would have been quite something if Supich had said that.
Absolutely. Wouldn't have that been a great opening line to a prayer?
We will never have peace until we return to God and respect life. I mean, if the whole society was oriented towards protecting the most innocent and towards protecting the mother and the father of the most innocent, with the billions and billions of dollars in these hedge funds and these people buying up thousands and thousands of property in one swing, this society is grotesque in many ways. And the Cardinal's presence there is a missed opportunity to call the Democratic Party back from the abyss. So I think it's not the Democratic Party of John Kennedy or
heavens no.
I remember it was a party of working men and working families, and it's now become a party of Hollywood elites. We always thought this would be crazy. This was silly.
I don't know about your family, Robert, but there wasn't anyone in my family except a very, 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 very kind of tight with money uncle was a Republican. Every family had an uncle like that, very, very wealthy but very tight. He was Republican. Everybody else was a Democrat. It was almost part of our religion to be Democrats. I never thought that you could be a Republican and a Catholic until all of a sudden this whole issue in 1968 in Chicago. That's why I was saying it's sort of reminiscent of that disastrous Democrat convention in Chicago. Until that time, then people in my family, I remember them saying this exactly. I hear a lot of people saying it today, but that's the first time I heard it, and I heard it from quite a number of them. They say, I did not leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me.
Yeah.
And that's it. So everything changed with that. But it's gone from bad to worse to I don't know what this is today. But really stop and think about it, Robert. The only one thing that I know, I can say this quite honestly, on that platform, on the Democrat platform, on the entire platform, is abortion. I don't know of anything else that's concrete or real.
Well, those other letters that are on there.
Well, fine.
The various groups that they want to support. Anyway,
it's a complex matter, but I'll tell you, getting back to what we were saying, what a great opportunity was missed, being invited to give a prayer at this convention.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up about these recent events is that they're worrisome because we almost never get the truth about anything. And I was just thinking, on July 13th, there was some shots that rang out in Butler, Pennsylvania. And there was a wound to the ear of Donald Trump, but then the person allegedly who fired that was immediately killed, but he seems to be slightly different from. There's photos circulating of another man. His name was Crooks, a 20-year-old, but there's another man named Urich who is 36, who seems to match that one photo they show on the roof. The number of bullets that came out of the gun was never counted, or there's no photo of it. Usually there's a little piece of tape saying 1 shell or 2 shells.
Mm-hmm.
People were crawling all over that roof, and the next day they're hosing it down. And someone was killed in the stands, but we don't know whether that bullet was from that gun or another. There were reports now from a guy on Chris Martinson on Peak Prosperity has tried to analyze these things. Some people poo-poo his analysis, but he shows that there were these shots that made this sound and these shots that made another sound as if they're not coming from the same gun. And then there's a couple of other shots, and there's the guy on the roof who's a sniper protecting the president, but he seems to be receiving fire from another direction, according to another analyst. I mean, I've been looking on the internet as different people are analyzing this. And then the people in charge of the Secret Service come to Congress, and they seem to have no knowledge of how anything was planned or how the investigation is going. They don't tell the congressional officials. And so now it's August 21st. It's been a month and 10 days, about 40 days. And we don't know what really happened. Was the Secret Service somehow infiltrated and allowed this because people were pointing this guy, or was there someone else there? What really happened? And so we move from moment to moment in our political life. The same thing happened. We watched the debate between Biden and Trump. We saw that Biden was quite advanced in age and had difficulty putting 3 or 4 sentences together. And suddenly, everyone recognizes that and says, well, he can't be our president anymore. We didn't even say, what has he been doing for the last months and years? And so he's suddenly out. Another candidate who was his vice president, Kamala Harris, is placed in place of him, and then given the candidacy at this convention we've just been talking about, the Democratic Convention in Chicago, with a platform which, as you say, seems focused only on abortion. So our political life does not seem to be in keeping with the deepest aspirations of our people. And it's sort of candidates moved and shuffled and imposed on us without us having much choice. So what type of democracy do we really have?
Well, that's exactly it, Robert. And you've got a lot of people thinking that way today. Thankfully to one great change in society, and that's the internet.
Yeah.
There's garbage galore on the internet. We know that. We come across it. You can't even get on without being hit by garbage, right? However, there are fantastic things that are happening there. And also, this is the first time, I think, in modern history anyway, since the advent of the television and cinema, this is the first time that people are getting, the majority of the population of the United States at least, are getting their news from independent sources, uncontrolled sources. Now you have to be careful with that. You can imagine. However, these are not far-fetched theories and things that they're saying. They're just not. And as a matter of fact, we know we had a former president of the United States say that his best wish would be to remain as president and be directing through a headphone or something. This is almost what's happening. We know this, and this is incredible. And the whole thing is incredible. It's actually, and I'm not being conspiratorial on this, but it's actually a coup. It's actually a coup what happened right in front of our eyes. No one would ever have believed that possible. And yet it's happening. It's happening, and I don't see that people are all that upset. They're not taking to the streets. It's a lot of this is very, very confusing. We're seeing a lot of things for the first time, and I don't think we're going to understand them in our lifetime. But yes, and when they came out also with John Kennedy's the new information on the Kennedy assassination, this confirmed what many people had believed since 1963, that it wasn't what, as the Warren Commission said. So if that can happen, why can't things happen today? And they are happening today. We know that.
Well, I don't want to talk about politics so much. I really think we should talk about the faith, because I think the church is a refuge, and I think it's an opening to life and to blessedness and to eternal life. And yet in the church too, we suffer as all these other secular political events occur. But someone wrote on the chat, why are we interested in Archbishop Viganò? And they feel maybe we're giving too much attention. How can we defend our interest in seeing what happens to him, Father Murr?
I'll tell you what, I've always been truthful, or tried to be anyway.
Yeah.
Who is?
That's Archbishop Viganò. Maybe we'll have him join us on a podcast.
Oh, okay. Now I see him. I didn't see him when you said, "Oh, there he is." Anyway, I thought you were talking about me again. It's all about me, right?
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is this. What I'm simply saying is, you asked me my take, I guess, on him, and why is he important, or why are we giving any credit to him, or importance to him, or time to him? He's a very important man. I think he's very important, because for years we've been saying, will someone step up and say something? And we've heard from countless priests, and I was one of them, who said, it's beyond my pay scale. This is not a job for me. It's a job for bishops. It's a job for the hierarchy, right? It's a job for the magisterium. It's not mine. Well, we had one member of the magisterium who spoke up, Bishop Strickland, and he was taken care of rather quickly. Things waited for a while, and finally, Archbishop Viganò, also spoke up. Now, why is he important? Well, first of all, he's important because he's a bishop. He's a successor of one of the apostles. He is what God willed for the church to be, right? He's part of that hierarchy of the church that God willed. He's very important for that reason. He's a bishop. Secondly, he's not just a bishop. He's a bishop who was in the diplomatic corps, who was the nuncio of the apostolic nuncio to the United States of America, which is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, he was dealing with some very powerful people and some very powerful problems. He knows what a lot of people didn't know. It's sort of like Cardinal Gagnon. I don't mean to keep going back there, Robert, but you know what I'm saying. Gagnon was carrying around the weight of the world with him for years, and you could see it weighing on him. Well, the same thing with Viganò. What we know of Viganò is what he tells us. What he cannot tell us is, believe me, is also incredibly important.
Yes.
So, and I believe that he threatened authority to such a degree that rather than authority answering his critiques, his questions that he was posing, they refused to answer. You don't do that today. That's not the way you run anything. But they refused and excommunicated him. Well, part of his own campaign is, excuse me, who are they to excommunicate me because A, B, and C? All right. So there's a problematic here, and I think it merits an examination. You don't just dismiss him. He's not a person you dismiss, not lightly, not at all. I think he's a very serious person, and he poses a serious threat to the present, let's call it, for lack of a better word, regime in the Catholic Church today. That's why he's important.
Okay, we have a comment. And thanks for all who are watching. And please, if you like the program or you like what we're trying to do, please hit the like button and the share button. And thank you very much for your support. Jeremy C.S., I'm not sure where you are. I love Father Murr because he just goes out and says what most of us think. There you go, Father.
Well,
The truth is that evil has invaded the church and Western governments. Anyone with eyes can't deny some of these things. I think that that's a truthful statement.
it's absolutely true. What Jeremy just wrote there is absolutely true. And this
So-
is what you know about Robert, what I know, and what the majority of Catholics know. Anybody who doesn't see this is because he doesn't want to see it.
Okay, so, we all want to get back to the quiet life of the Bells of St. Mary's, where we go to parish church and we say hello to the priest and we kneel and listen to the gospel and receive the Eucharist, go to confession. And yet all of these things are in jeopardy. Confession has almost disappeared. The church, the priests often become activists. They go to a Democratic convention and don't mention Jesus Christ. I mean, Bishop Supich. Somehow something has entered into the church, a kind of worldly attitude. And the case of Archbishop Viganò is one in which he watched all this process from a very key position in the Vatican. Then he started to denounce cover-ups of abuse, of sort of crimes of sexual abuse. And then he started to think, where is the doctrinal rot coming from? Where is the departure from the tradition of the faith?
It's all connected, right?
Yeah, and he's tried to now work that all out. He's 83 now. I'm kind of concerned he may have peaked in his, youthful energy. He was still jogging in his 70s. He told me that. He said, but I'm a little slower than I used to be.
God love him.
And at 83, and who knows the pressures, as you said, his private prayer and his pressures that may be upon him certainly could take a toll on his veins, on his arteries, on his heart. So I'm thinking we must see what's valid in what he's argued. And let's look at that last quote that I didn't read. What did we have there? Viganò is exposing a part of the church most of us didn't fully realize existed before McCarrick. And it is rubbing the powers that be in the wrong way. Oh, so there we go. So I think you and I are a small sort of team dating back to Archbishop Cardinal Gagnon, dating back also in my own case to the 1980s, speaking even with people like Archbishop Marcinkus, and who told me that there are things he could tell me that would curl my hair. He said that to me. And then he said, come to talk to me before I die and I'll tell you those things. And I called him a week before. I called him in February of 2006, and I'd like to come talk to you. And he said, well, maybe not yet. And I called him the next day and he said, okay, come out this weekend. And that Friday he died.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I know that there could be threats, there could be blackmail, there could be, they could be told. So the world in the church, the factions in the church, and then the simple defects and sins of human beings are all different factors in this large equation of protecting our mother, the church. And that's what we're trying to do. And Viganò, I think, has been trying to do that. His rhetoric at times gets to be very heavy and dark, speaking of the Antichrist, speaking of perversion, speaking of sexual sins, but these matters must be discussed if we're going to purify the church, which is the new Israel.
Robert, would you say, as I would you say that his intentions are for the betterment of the church?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying too, and I don't understand why people want to shut him up, shut it out. Any argument that he gives, shut it out. They should be looked at. They should be looked at seriously. They should be answered, and that's what he's been It's what he's been pushing for years, that they're not being answered is an answer. That is an answer.
Okay.
It's like the same thing that you and I talked about initially years ago. The Gagnon report, where Gagnon said that there were Freemasons running the Vatican. He gave their names and this, that, and the other thing. Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò said the same thing, and he's saying it today. And he's in a position to know. He was a member of the Roman Curia for years. He was the apostolic nuncio, the ambassador of the Vatican to the United States. I think he knows a thing or two. He's saying the same thing that Gagnon said, the same thing. And this continues going on without an answer from officialdom. This is what's bothering many people.
Well, so I'd like to take a little look at his interview and a couple of the questions that were asked. Which this is
Good.
Franca Gian Soldati. I know Franca. She's a wonderful lady. She's devoted her life to reporting on the Vatican. She's a very solid professional. She writes for Il Messaggero, the Messenger, in Rome, one of the leading newspapers of Rome.
Di sinistro un po', but
A
good.
little bit. The paper is a little bit to the left, yeah, but I would say she's a kind of balanced journalist and honest person.
Okay.
So, okay, we have someone saying, thank you both for your boldness. I'm not sure if we really are bold, Father. It seems to me we're just speaking normally.
I'll tell you what, if I'm not here next week, you'll know that I was bold.
Yeah,
Maybe too bold.
well, that comes up in this interview, and okay, we'll see. This has to do with 2011. Go back to 2011. Pope Benedict implored you to accept being appointed as nuncio to the United States. When Viganò was on the verge of going up to really, I think, be in charge of all the Vatican finances. So there you have a motive for somebody else there to get him out. And Benedict is sort of the
It's funny what happens to anybody who gets involved in Vatican finances. It's like a death sentence.
Yeah, and I think it may have something to do with the gold.
Yeah, they're being set up.
So okay. You had clashes with Cardinal Bertone, Tarcisio Bertone. I always remember Saint Tarcisio, who protected the Eucharist in the early church.
Do you remember that I asked you for a relic of him? And I still haven't gotten it. Do you remember that? Okay, go ahead.
So I always, when I think of Cardinal Bertone, I always think of him as Tarcisio. But he came from Genoa, and his name is linked to the scandal of the misappropriation of funds from the Bambino Gesù Hospital, which is a leading children's hospital in the world. And there never came to be any sort of trial, but he at least was alleged to have taken some hundreds of thousands of euros and refurbished his apartment in the Palazzo San Carlo, which is across the street from the Domus Santa Marta. It's up there in the back left-hand corner of the Vatican. And he has an apartment with a huge terrace, and everyone always speaks about the terrazzo, the terrace, that's as big as almost a football field or something, where he can have 300 people come up and sip on champagne or something.
Well, you never know when you're going to need a place for 300 people to sip on champagne.
Well, he claimed he was using it to raise funds for the hospital. So he needed to refurbish it to make it even more alluring. Anyway.
I understand. That's as crazy as that might sound to a lot of people. I do understand that.
Yeah. And then he had an assistant who was 19 or 20 years old in Genoa named Marco Simeone, who he brought down to Rome, who was a man of questionable character.
And the assistant was 19 years old?
Yeah. And he became an important player in a number of events in the Vatican. So what did Benedict XVI say to you? Franca asks Viganò.
Yes.
What did he say to you in 2011? And this is his answer. To speak of a disagreement, how did things go that day? And what were the main reasons for the disagreement with Bertone, who was the number 2 man in the Vatican? And all sorts of people went to Pope Benedict and said, remove Bertone and bring in another man from the diplomatic service, because Bertone had worked with Ratzinger at Doctrine of the Faith. And Ratzinger said, Der Mann bleibt, wo ist. The man remains where he is. He refused to remove Bertone. And so he experienced this type of pontificate where Bertone is alleged to have been somewhat less than perfectly reliable and perfectly honest. So Viganò says, to speak of a disagreement seems euphemistic to me. Thirsty for power, unscrupulous. I mean, this is like a novel, Father. You've written your novels, Father Murr. We are reading.
No. All exaggeration falls short.
Thirsty for power, unscrupulous, manipulative, and contiguous to Masonic circles. This is the portrait of Cardinal Bertone, to whom Benedict XVI was unfortunately subjugated. Bertone did everything he could to remove me from the Secretariat of State, because in my very delicate role, I prevented him from promoting his candidates, men of his circle, who were corrupt and often sexually perverted. He managed to transfer me to the governorate on July 16th, 2009.
That's right.
Where in my action, so the governorate is the mayor's office of Vatican City State. It's sort of,
City Hall.
City Hall. Building up behind on the hill, behind the back of St. Peter's Basilica. Where in my action to combat the vast network of corruption. So what he's referring to here is different payments made, bustarella, little envelopes containing cash that are handed around for this favor or that favor, also involving even things like kickbacks for the Christmas tree in St. Peter's Square, which cost $800,000. And after Viganò had been there for a year, he got it down with another vendor to $400,000 to bring this huge tree from northern Italy down to show next to the obelisk in St. Peter's Square. I had discovered the role and complicity of the Secretary of State himself in covering, supporting, and promoting the malfeasance and in making personal profit from it. He alleges. Benedict XVI told me during the private audience granted to me on April 4th, 2011. So he has a record of this. This was the turning point where Viganò is sort of ousted from Rome. And this becomes the beginning of his whole new career, which ends up where he is today. This is 13 years ago. On April 4th, and Benedict is going to not be Pope after 2 more years. He's going to resign. That he wanted to appoint me president of the Prefecture for Economic Affairs of the Holy See. He would have been in charge of the Vatican's money. Viganò would have been in charge of the Vatican's money. But Bertone...
Robert, it's exactly what I'm saying. He was being set up. They were arranging for him to be set up, because anybody who goes into that, ask Cardinal Pell. Oh, you can't. He's dead. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
So, Bertone, with the complicity of Cardinal Laiolo, president of the governorate, who was also involved in the network of corruption, he alleges. I don't know the details on these allegations. I don't know what. I know Laiolo, and I don't know. He seemed a pleasant enough man. So I'm like the child here walking through saying, hello, how are you? I'm writing a little article about the Vatican, and I don't know. I see the man. He says, oh, I'm willing to meet you and give an interview to you, but I don't know the details of what may be alleged here. Anyway, imposed himself forcefully on the Pope and obtained my expulsion from the Roman Curia. So there you go. Aware of this plot hatched to the detriment of the Holy See and Benedict himself, and knowing that the Pope's will that I continued to clean up was being subverted, while my removal would have nullified the work done. He kept saying that to me all the time. He knew that by getting him out of there, he was just stopped short of finishing a lot of plans that would have, what he thought it would have done a lot of good.
Right.
I initially tried to resist, that is, to go against the will actually of the Pope, not without great difficulty, since I was precluded from having any direct access to the Pope. There you have another problem. Thus, after a long inner travail, a personal letter from Benedict XVI convinced me to give up his opposition and to accept the nomination to the United States. Benedict wrote to me, quote, he's got the letter still to this day. I would like to tell you, this is Benedict writing in 2011. And he's obviously been praying and thinking, okay, what am I going to do here? And we all say Benedict was the great theologian, the great professor, but not so good in judging and appointing men. So Benedict must have decided to do this, and this is what he decided. I have been reflecting and praying about your condition after the latest events. The painful news of the death of His Excellency Monsignor Pietro Sanbi, who had been in America as nuncio and has just died.
Yes.
June of 2011, has confirmed me in the conviction that your providential position, that what God wills for you at this time is the nunciature in the United States of America. Of course, for that reason, I got to know him well, because I went to the nunciature. Not in Rome that I got to know him. I knew him by meeting him in the nunciature in America a couple times a year for an hour or two, going through everything. And I see that as part of my own providence, because furthermore, I am certain that your knowledge of this great country will help you to take on the demanding challenge of this work, which in many ways is decisive for the future of the universal church. Those are the words of Benedict.
And Robert, it's very interesting. We should continue this the next time. Let's pick up from here. Seriously. No, this is very good. I've got to go because it's an hour and 5 minutes already we've been on, and because I've got to go.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe it's supper. Maybe supper time.
No, it's not supper time. No, I have, as a matter of fact, I have another interview with John Henry right now.
All right.
Okay. But no, let's pick it up right there, right where we left it. Let's pick it up from there for next week.
Okay. Thank you, Father Murr.
Okay. Unless something earth-shattering happens, and we're forced to give our opinions, our studied opinions on those matters. All right?
It's been great. It's been great getting to know you and working with you now for 5 years, but the last year or two. Yeah. Thank you, Father.
Robert, thank you so much.
2024. This August, we are in Spain and France, Garabandal to Lourdes. September, we head to Mexico, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we learn about the Flower World Prophecy. October, we return to Andalusia, Spain with Father Murr for a retreat and pilgrimage, and we end the year in Italy, Christmas in Rome for the beginning of the Jubilee year. We have a few seats left on each pilgrimage. Be sure to sign up now, and we hope to meet you on pilgrimage.